Welcome to Must Reads, a series of interviews by the Center for Preaching Excellence at Perkins School of Theology, in which we point out some books that we think that you preachers ought to know about. And today, my guest is Dr. Rob Olin. Dr. Olin, I'm going to have to take a deep breath before I tell all your titles, all right? But I'll try. But he is the Associate Professor of Preaching and Ministry, the Director of Graduate Bible Programs, and Dean of Distance Education at Kentucky Christian University. He is also Affiliate Associate Professor of Preaching at Fuller Theological Seminary, having served a number of churches throughout the South and the Southwestern U.S., written in numerous articles, and published 2 books, one on pastoral care and one on preaching and technology that we'll be talking about today. I don't know how you have time to talk to me, but I'm glad you've taken time to be with us. He is currently working on a commentary on the Johannine epistles and a book on preaching in AI, which we'll be very much looking forward to. So thank you so much for being with us to talk today about Digital Jazz, an ebook published by Working Preacher, and the subtitle is Preaching, Media, and Technology. And as I read through the book, which I really appreciate the practicality and profound nature of the book, but I noted that digital jazz is a reference to improvisation. Is that right? That's at the heart of jazz?
It is because there's actually 2 reasons where the title comes from. One is the idea of improvisation, because during COVID especially, we were improvising
Right,
with technology and what's going to work and what doesn't work, and how do we use what we have in order to broadcast the gospel to anybody who was watching and listening. It also comes from a line out of the movie Tron Legacy,
hmm,
and it just was something that struck me. The idea of change is kind of like jazz, because
hmm,
you never know what it's going to be until it actually happens.
right,
And COVID, regardless of how we might feel about it, changed everything,
right,
including preaching and worship and communication in general. And we're still living within the wake of that, and we're still experiencing change, and we're
right,
still experiencing jazz. AI is probably one of those wakes of the COVID-19 and how we changed communication and teaching and politics and everything during COVID. And
right,
so that idea of improvisation is just something that's kind of now part of where we are culturally, I think.
right. So now it's not a matter of whether a preacher will use technology, but how, right? Which is
I
what your
believe
book is
so.
helpful
Yeah,
with. Yeah, for
it,
sure.
it's
So
almost at a point where we can't not use technology at this point.
right, exactly. Well, the book goes through kind of your autobiographical relationship with technology, and then moves into the how you see the current intersection of preaching and technology. And then you've got several very helpful chapters on things like graphic design, live streaming, podcasting, social media, digital platforms. So anything sort of a smorgasbord of topics for a preacher, they're very helpful. But I wanted to focus in on some key themes from the
Sure.
book today. We've already talked about kind of the way COVID has shifted how we view technology, but in terms of what's been lost and what's been found, what might be one major loss in the move to online worship and preaching?
I think the most obvious and most clear one is the loss of physical manifested community. There are folks now who are only, we might say, remote worshipers, remote attendees.
Right.
What I find though is that those folks are actually more regular than in-person attendees, because it's oftentimes their one connection to the church.
Hmm.
However, we don't see them much anymore unless we do church Zoom style on a big screen. So
Hmm.
we lose their physical presence, but we know that they're still there digitally.
Hmm.
But also, I think it has led to a breakdown in church attendance and congregational investment over the last 5 or 6 years,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it's a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Yeah. Well, what's the blessing? Is there a positive takeaway from this move to online preaching and worship?
Um, I think there's at least 2. Is one is we can engage online worshipers in ways that we may not think we can.
Hmm.
Um, like we can ask people who are visiting online. We have to set this up, but we could ask them to lead a prayer, or offer the announcements, or give the community meditation, or maybe even preach the sermon.
Hmm.
I think that there are ways we can engage online digital worshipers in ways that are creative and engaging. Also, just the fact that we now are expanding our reach. Like, how do we broadcast the gospel more viably because of what COVID taught us?
Hmm.
Live streaming. Who thought live stream was even possible before COVID?
Right,
That was a big church kind of thing, a rich church kind of thing. Now it's I use my
right,
cell phone to live stream worship service. I did
right,
for
right.
several years. You
Right.
know.
Yeah, you do point out in the book that you don't have to be resource rich
Yeah.
to be creative with technology. Well, what about one thing I really picked up on was and it seems like it may be a gain from this move to online, but that is you see a shift in the preacher's relationship with the
Yeah.
congregation and identity from the sage on the stage to maybe more a spiritual director. Could
Yeah,
that be a
it's something I've
positive?
been following for a while. Scott Gibson wrote a little book called Preaching with a Plan over a decade ago, where he talks about sermon planning and moving more toward being a spiritual director. And I
Hmm.
think that especially the move to more digital is when we got off stage, right? We got out of the pulpit and
Right,
we're broadcasting from our offices or our homes, and people see us as real people.
right.
That changes that dynamic of I'm no longer this high clad stage on a stage. I'm normal person.
Yeah.
I'm
All
wearing,
right.
I remember doing Sunday night services in a t-shirt and jeans from
Yeah.
my living room. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Right. Yeah.
we can soften the tone of pastoral responsibility. I mean, we're still ministers, we're still preachers, we're still pastors, but we're
Sure.
real now. We're normal people now because
Okay.
we've taken ourselves out of the off the pedestal to how do I work with you? How do I
Right.
care for you in this digital context? I One of my favorite things to do was drive through communion during at my church
Oh,
during some
right.
of the higher times of COVID because we still need to offer that. In my tradition, we offer it weekly, but I couldn't offer it in the church building. So I'd
Hmm.
stand outside after Sunday morning after the live stream and say, I'll be here for the next 45 minutes if you want communion. And I would pray with people and talk with people, counsel people. And it was really powerful moment for me to see people want that connection, even in times of great communal crisis. They still need the pastoral touch.
Right. Right. Well, I noticed in several of the services and meetings I was in, you always met the person's dog or cat.
Oh yeah,
They would call, or if they had a toddler, they'd definitely get in on it. So it
oh yeah,
definitely
yeah.
humanizes us. So moving to the question of social media, which you deal with
Sure.
very helpfully as a sort of Miss Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I always have to check which was the evil one, and we know that it was Mr. Hyde. So social media has that sort of dark or
Yeah.
potentially negative use, misinformation, fear mongering, doom scrolling, etc. But also, I was really taken by your sense that it could be, you had three adjectives. It could be at its best relational, influential, and generous. You say a word about that? Those are
Sure.
three wonderful words.
I've always felt that way about social media. Those actually come from Michael Hyatt's book Platform that was published back in the early 2000s.
Mhm.
But that idea of being relational, because I'm trying to connect with somebody. I'm trying to share a bit of myself with somebody. I mean, yes, there's the whole filtered perspective that's come about in the last few years, but really, it's about making connections. It's about meeting people that you may never see in person, but you can communicate with through social media. Um, Influential, sharing sermons, sharing articles, sharing book ideas, travel tips.
Hmm.
I mean, that you think about an Etsy board or a Reddit thread where people are sharing and sharing and sharing. They may get in arguments, they may get into conversations, they may have side conversations, but they're sharing from their lives about where they are. And then obviously, lastly, generous is sharing it for free.
Hmm.
I
Right,
despise that we've moved to more of the verified accounts in places like Twitter and Instagram, where you have to prove you're a real person now by paying money,
right, right,
because that's not generous, that's not influential, that's not relational at all. That's the exact opposite of that. And so I would like it to be back the way it used to be in that regard, where it's
right,
I am who I am, and if you like it, great. If you don't, find somebody that you do like instead.
right. Well, those three adjectives are really helpful and
Yeah,
maybe a good descriptor for our ministry in general. And
exactly.
it seemed
So
to me, am I right in focusing in on a key theme of your book being that technology can be about relationships, or it should be
yes, because
relationships.
it helps bring people together that are separated by by space, by distance. I mean, think about that right now. You're in Texas and I'm in Kentucky.
Right.
30 years ago, this would have been almost impossible to have this conversation. 20 or even really 10 years ago, this would have been a difficult conversation to have this way. And
Right.
now we're talking, in real time, and engaging in a real positive conversation that's very important to both of us.
Hmm.
And we're doing that through a form of social media, the Zoom platform.
Right. Right. Well, I appreciate so much this book. I actually have three adjectives to describe your book. How about that?
Thank you.
If that's a oh, and I also wanted to say we are looking forward to your book on AI. So I hope we can have another conversation. No pressure, but,
Yeah, I hope so. I
yeah.
look forward to a future conversation about that.
Yeah, so here are my three adjectives for your book. Again, those who are listening and watching, this is called Digital Jazz: Preaching, Media, and Technology. It's an ebook published by Working Preacher, and we'll put up the information on how you can attain it on the screen. So here are my three adjectives for your book: creative, enjoyable, and fruitful.
Thank you. Thank
So I
you.
appreciate
That was my goal.
these practical tips on how to use technology. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks, Alyce. I appreciate you having me today.